I might be running for politics in Nevada. Here's why. Thanks for joining me today on Jaron Lukas Live. This is my live channel on YouTube where I've been discussing a lot of different topics over the past year and a half. This has really been a channel for me to express myself. And I've gotten to a point where I feel more comfortable talking about new topics that I was definitely hesitant to talk about before. One of which today is why I might be running for politics in the state of Nevada and why I think other millennials, Gen Xers, and Gen Zers pretty soon here should be running as well. And there are a few topics we're going to cover here today. One is some of the problems that are very obvious throughout the entire political system in the United States that people in older generations, there's a very popular term right now, boomer, you've probably heard it. There's a reason why people are using that term. And this video isn't about ageism. It's not about being negative towards a generation that has frankly built the country that we live in. But there are problems today in America that we cannot overlook anymore. And that's what I want to talk about. It's something that if you're already a friend of mine, we've probably had this conversation before over time, but over the years, I have really moved my view as I've personally dealt with regulation, starting two venture-backed companies that were both regulated in the financial services industry, learned quite a bit from those experiences, as well as something that's happening today that Eric Weinstein, who runs the podcast The Portal, brought out this week. He just really pointed out so many pertinent topics that we're seeing. And I'm going to summarize what he said real quick, which is he summarizes something called the disc. And the disc is a network of elites across politics, corporations, and the media who have a seated interest in keeping society the way that it has been. You can think about if you own a paper mill. You can think about if you own a major news company. You can think about many other things that exist today that many of us know are not sustainable. Many of us know need to change and are not. They're not only not improving our planet, they are destroying it. They're the root cause of that. And so it is up to people today who are Gen X, millennials, and Gen Zers to start to run for politics and change the way things are being done. And I personally don't have what I would call like a political agenda. I believe in fairness. I believe in consciousness. I believe in sustainability. I believe in personal freedom, as do a lot of people out there. Will Campbell, thanks for messaging me. What's up, man? Let me know if you have any thoughts on these topics as I go, because I'm about to go super deep into a lot of this. And by the way, this is a live stream show. So if you're catching the live stream, first, give yourself a like by hitting the like button. And thank you. Chat with me live. If you're catching a replay of this, which I imagine many of you are, because I'm going to make sure that many people in my district, which is District 2, I will be running most likely. There's about an 80% chance that I'll run for the seat in the Nevada State Assembly of District 2 in Nevada, which is in Las Vegas. So if you live in Summerlin, if you live in any of that kind of West Las Vegas, this might be applicable to you. But even if you don't, really what I'm talking about today is the need for what's happening today that is being ignored still, and what we need to do as people who are starting to come of age. We're getting a little bit of life experience, and we need to be using that to lead the world in a direction where it's going to be sustainable for humanity. And if you've talked to someone about this before and they've come back, maybe you've talked to them about the sustainability topic in general, because that's of course one I'm very passionate about. Maybe you've talked about them before and they say, well, yeah, that's great, but the world can't run on happiness, and we can't have all of our prices go up, and they make excuses, and it's like, what the heck, dude? Here are the numbers, and humanity will die if we keep doing what you're doing. That's a problem. And so that's something that I have become so passionate about, is this topic of sustainability, the topic of, frankly, why is it that we are butting heads with the government, the media, corporations, establishment so much these days? Why is it that millennials and many Gen Xers and Gen Zers are on their way towards this? Why is it that people aren't ahead where they should be in their career? Why are their salaries going down? Because of the competitiveness in our current economy, and frankly, a set of policies that are being run on the national level to prop up stock prices and real estate assets, so that effectively the people who are paying to vote people in, because you may remember that we passed a law maybe 15 years ago that allows corporations to finance campaigns. And that will be one major issue that I tackle through. I don't even know if I'm going to have a political career. I'm an entrepreneur, but I do have very deep experience in many of these areas that I think can add quite a lot of value into how do we put Nevada further ahead? How do we attract companies here? How do we make it an easy place to start a business, which frankly, we've done a pretty good job of it already, and we need to keep doing it. But you look at the national level, it's no secret that the top 1% are the people who own all the assets. In fact, I just did a video about it. If you haven't seen it yet, definitely go check it out. I've done a couple of them, really explaining that topic in quite a bit of detail. Medic will, truth, we need more peer-to-peer freedom. Yes. And a word that I've been hearing a lot recently in circles outside of tech is decentralization. We need decentralization of ideas. And I mentioned a podcast that Eric Weinstein did this week. And he talks about the disc. The disc is a complex. It's an organization, a little decentralized in itself, but it is. Think about the G20. The world leaders getting together at the G20. Think about the summits that happen where billionaires get together. Think about, I've been a part of different summits in various industries myself. I've seen these behind the scenes. And think about how those friendships form in a vertical, in an industry. It could be in corporate America. It could be in tech. It could be in politics. It could be in the media. And people get to know each other in their verticals. Certain people rise to the top of those, and then they go to other events where people meet each other and become friends there. And this is no secret. Billionaires talk about this all the time, and I don't blame them because they are looking for, they want to meet interesting people. Of course, a lot of this is very ego driven, goes against things you hear me talk about on this channel a lot, which is minimalist lifestyle. But that is the real key to happiness, and maintaining that in anything you do, even if you're running for a position, which if you're watching this video, I want you to think about if you're in these generations that we have here. But you got to wonder why, for instance, Andrew Yang isn't rising in the polls. why he isn't being invited to major debates, why he isn't getting the network time that we know he should have. And I'm not claiming an endorsement of any sort for Andrew Yang. I'm just saying it's a little strange. It's very obviously manipulated. Why is that happening? I would love to explore the interests at play that are keeping that conversation of Andrew Yang and who I personally like, Tulsi. Why isn't Tulsi getting press attention? One of the female, a very kind of neutral candidate who will end this like vicious deadlock of fighting between the Republicans and the Democrats. Like, this has been crazy. Travis McClung just said, "What's up, man?" He's a friend of mine. Loved Andrew Yang's campaign. Hi, Jaron. Yeah, Travis. And if you liked it, then I know we're on to something, because you're definitely part of this whole generation of us that I'm talking about here. And that's one of the exciting things is like, we are the campaigns that we're going to be running. Like I drive down one of the streets by me. People are starting to put up billboards for different positions. It's all the same campaign signs I've been seeing for the last 20 years. People need to get a new designer, and that's exactly what I'll be doing. Travis, actually, we need to talk about that. So hit me up later, because I do need to talk to you, actually. What this all comes to, and I'm paraphrasing an idea from this podcast, is idea suppression. Why do not all, even though not all ideas are good, and that's why some of these barriers exist in the first place, why are some of the most important ideas that actually could change the world not rising to the top? The whole system protects institutions from individuals. It's made specifically to protect institutions from individuals who might be opposed to them, who might be opposed to their interests. And this is something where if you're watching this video right now, you probably already know this. But I'm telling you that those suspicions you've had in your mind are right. And more people are talking about it, especially as the long podcast format has been growing. More and more people are talking about it. But you gotta look at what's happening, why it's not being covered in the bigger media. One of the biggest reasons being is that the message that the White House sends is strictly through the major media outlets. And in return, the major media outlets sort of tell the narrative that the White House wants to hear, or they might not be invited. You got to think about stuff like that now. And because it's growing and it's supporting fragile institutions that are specifically built for growth. They require growth, which really funnels down into a central banking model that we have, but we won't go into that today. They require growth, and there's certain parts of their business which are very fragile, definitely not sustainable. And if those were to be poked at, if the word of the wheat industry and cereal brands, if the word were really to get out that, hey, maybe humans are actually supposed to eat oil as their major source of energy, and all this stuff about carbohydrates, which then turns into cancer, that's what all the scientific research shows. What would happen to General Mills and Kraft if that kind of dialogue really started to take ground? That's just a small example of the kind of thing I'm talking about here, which is those of us who are very tech savvy. We are interested in our personal health. We're interested in living a happy life, and we learn about these things. And then there's this whole other part of the world that the disc, as Eric Weinstein calls it, is purposefully created to make sure that that info doesn't reach a critical mass, which happen to be their customers. So that's what I'm encouraging anyone who is watching this video to start to think about and start to support people and candidates in our generation who are willing to get into the fight. The system is going to crumble on its own. So what we need to do is not so much a fight, but it is that we need to use our knowledge of, specifically if you're running for some of the lower state and city offices, we need to use our knowledge of digital marketing and the support from other people like you and other people like us to start running some of these campaigns for people who we think are great people. There's a guy, there are a couple of things that have happened to me over the last week and a half that have really inspired me. I don't really have big political ambitions. I do strongly believe that there are some major problems that are not being solved. And so first, a friend of mine who I see at my coffee shop occasionally told me he's running for a small local position. And this is one of the nicest guys I've ever met. He's a genuine person, genuinely cares about people. And that really was the first thing that inspired me. The second was watching Eric Weinstein's podcast. So I highly recommend you go do that. And after this video, I'll put a link to it below to make it convenient, but you can also just search for that. But watching that podcast really, really inspired me, because when you look at who is in power, by the way, the media is starting to talk about this. The millennials are about to take charge, but they talk about it over the next 20 years. The problem is that we have a sustainability issue. We have a corporate greed issue. That one's really growing. It's bad. And all you have to look at is, and if I run, which there's only an 80% chance that I will right now, I'm not going to necessarily be on the daily grind of doing things at the national level and trying to change central banking yet. But what you can see more and more in government is a growing complex of companies who rely on government funds. You can see media that's starting to become somewhat irrelevant, really taking the last thing they have, which is the political conversation, and skewing it in one direction. It would be very interesting to know what the political economics are of the major news sources. And there's also, we have corporations, we have news, and we have the government at large, who is going into politics a lot of times for their own corporate profit, maybe after, or they have a big ego. Most people who are entering politics historically do. So they're doing it for their own power. What we need is a new generation of people who are consciously minded, who are genuinely good people at their core, which most of us are. Most of us, anyone watching this video right now, you certainly are. So thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. This is actually one of the, in terms of like live viewers, we are having the most concurrent live viewers that I have had yet on this channel. So thank you so much. And I haven't been able to do quite as many videos lately because I've just been so busy with everything I'm doing outside of YouTube, which is really my hobby. So we have a couple of points that I want to kind of talk about here, which are again from this podcast. The thing is that the other leg here is the scientific community and the scientific and academic community. A lot of this really comes into, there has become an element of the scientific community. Quick deep dive into physics here. You have general relativity theories and you have quantum physics theories, and they don't they can't meet. They're not working together. And so far, it's been proposed that string theory is something that can reconcile them. The math does not work. And so scientists, in their rigidity, are refusing to accept alternative explorations in science and to fund these based on some of the experiences that people are having in meditation, which in the deepest states of meditation, people are becoming more happy, more conscious. They are learning how to breathe and smile better. They are starting to look at the broader world instead of their own personal objectives first. I could try to explain why, but I'm not going to get into that. But the fact is that the scientific community is also at odds with something that's happening right now, which is really causing a wider push of consciousness, of happiness, of something really good that's coming out in the world right now. So many different areas which have oddly aligned historical objectives based on things that a lot of them happened in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s. A lot of the laws we have, a lot of the political and social structures we have today were formed then, and they're breaking down as new technology comes out. And unfortunately, that is the trigger that needs to be unlatched in order to reach this objective of sustainability, whether it's in the environment or the way we live our lives, personal happiness. Humans are not robots. And so bringing the human element back into society is really what this is all about. And it's about looking at making our lives happy, better, still having an economy, still having the opportunity to explore your own ideas and succeed, having the opportunity to fail, and letting that be a part of your personal growth, but also enabling those people, which is most of us, to have that exploration without constantly being stopped by government agencies who don't know anything about technology and media who does not care about actually promoting the agenda of making the world sustainable for the planet, making workers happy. So with those together, that's why I am so passionate about people. If you're watching this video, find a way, whether it's through yourself or a friend, go support this change. And there's a community that's growing online. I estimate that right now about 2 million people are in it in the US that are talking about these issues. Why don't you see it on national media? Why don't we currently have anyone elected? Maybe there are like 5 people. I know there are a couple of, we won't even go into who's good and who's bad. That's not important. But the fact is that it's going to take us actually doing something about it. We're in a new decade. There's so much opportunity here. And the fact is that the longer that we leave these higher generations in power, look at what they're doing with the economy, with keeping interest rates down as much as we can. And so the corporations can keep buying back their stock and taking on debt. How do we think that's going to end? Do we think it might be worse than the last recession? What's that going to do to people and their jobs when they've been fired, and all the rich people who did a quick money grab because the government was keeping interest rates low are sitting okay, or they're going to be fine. That's the issue we're talking about today, is that we have elected people who are supporting the interests of corporate objectives and investors over consumers, over workers, over anyone who has a dream and wants to accomplish something. Because the more we go on, over the last 15 years, the rise in the tech industry of how regulation is coming into that, it is so much easier, but it is so much harder to start a tech company today, mostly because the liabilities keep going up for very well-meaning, good-hearted people who aren't going to do wrong, but they don't have a license. And for just look at taxi licenses. How stupid was that? So we have to come together. We have to support each other. We have to do battle with the disc. And that's what my conversation here today is all about. Anyone who says we're here to push the system into unrest and take it down, ignore them. It's time for people who are well-meaning, good people, who don't have an agenda, who maybe meditate. That's something I always look for, but that's a personal preference. People like that to finally take into position, help millennials, help future generations out before the policies that for some reason are still going on. I mean, the whole thing about corporate entanglement with government and the revolving door of jobs with people who are leaving office to go work in the private sector and make $500K or $2 million. Those stories are growing. They're not reported in the media, but they're growing. The regulation on small businesses, try starting a small business in New York City. I challenge you. I've done it before. Major reason why I love Las Vegas and Nevada. It is a lot easier here. And so what we need to do is come together, support each other. I would like to thank everyone who has been watching this. I don't know if this is a political speech. I don't know if this is a motivational talk. I don't know if this is just a partial digest of the Eric Weinstein podcast. But this is an issue that I really care about, because as I try to do things like have no waste, be zero waste days, try to do that. You'll see how hard it is. Also know that 50% of trash is actually compostable, and only 15% of the plastic we recycle is actually recycled. The rest of it is thrown into the landfills. The system is broken. So even the people who feel like they're trying and doing good, everything that's happening behind the scenes, the governments are letting the private companies who are the trash companies get away with that one. That's something you can be sure I would be looking at. So with that, let's all support each other. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know what you think about any of the particular issues I've talked about today. If you'd like me to expand on them in recent topics. I'm most likely only going to be doing the show once a week for the time being, because I am just so busy with everything I'm doing in my business and just really like trying to get some of the ground running on this little thing. So probably once a week. Make sure you subscribe to get notified when I go live, and it will probably be on weekends going forward. And most importantly, I'm also here to support you. So if you're thinking about running, or you have ideas that you think might be important in this, or you are a Facebook or YouTube ads pro and you've worked on political campaigns before and you'd like to help more people like this, like us, who are conscious, get elected to do better than what's currently being done, hit me up in the comments. And with that, thank you so much for joining. And until next week, stay visionary.